Human life is sacred. And therefore, the spirit of Antichrist, which is already at work in this world, is opposed to the flourishing of life. Satan supports abortion. He's willing to let 1 million murdered babies go to heaven if it'll create 1 million murderers on earth. But because human life is sacred, that means that everything that leads to life is also sacred, and the spirit of Antichrist is against all of the things that lead to life as well. For example, the union that produces life is sacred. And so all of the protections that God has placed around that union, all of the thou shalts and the thou shalt nots surrounding that union, they're not put there to spoil our fun. They're put there to protect the sanctity of a union that is holy, because it is how new life enters into this world. And human life is holy. And when that union is treated with the reverence that it deserves, then it is beautiful and sacred. But when it is misused, then what should have been sacred becomes sinful. What would have been priceless becomes cheap. What would have been a blessing becomes a curse. And the child grows up without a father, is cheated. But the same spirit of Antichrist that cheapens life also cheapens the union that produces life. You know, the crowd that so aggressively pushes abortion also pushes a sex education program that stigmatizes innocence and encourages young people to ditch their virginity as fast as they possibly can. No sex ed curriculum that promotes abstinence is ever endorsed by Planned Parenthood for an obvious reason. They promote sexual promiscuity among children in order to create customers. It's just good business for abortionists. But abstinence? Why on earth would they want to teach children that? Monica Klein is the founder of a group called It Takes a Family. She was a Planned Parenthood trained sex educator for 10 years. She started off thinking that her job was to teach children to be abstinent, but she was quickly corrected. Oh no, her Planned Parenthood trainer explained, teaching abstinence is judgmental. We don't want them to abstain, but to indulge more safely. And what Monica Klein saw was intimacy redefined from being special to being crass, seeking pleasure over meaningful relationships, accepting STDs as a way of life, and terminating the lives of babies so that we can worship our sexual rights without hindrance. People who cheapen life also cheapen the union that leads to life. So how exactly is this sacred life-producing union supposed to be protected? By reserving it for a sacred relationship, a holy relationship. We call it holy matrimony for a reason. It is a sacred covenant between a man and wife that is consecrated by God for the flourishing of life and love. But the same spirit of Antichrist that cheapens life and cheapens the relationship that produces life also cheapens the institution of marriage that sanctifies that relationship that was ordained by God in the very beginning in the garden. Tragically, a growing number of young people in our day are shacking up in what the Bible calls fornication. And they justify it saying, our love is really all that matters. Marriage is nothing but an expensive piece of paper from the government to tell you something that you already know. Dr. Moeller, president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, answers this nothing but a piece of paper line saying, marriage is a public institution, not merely a private commitment. There is a universe of difference between a private promise and a public pledge. Marriage is about a public vow made by the man to the woman and the woman to the man, whereby they become now husband and wife. Making something public establishes it on a whole new level, doesn't it? The Bible says in Hebrews 13:4, marriage is honorable in all and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge.